Hello, fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. I am joined today by two guests. First is Virgil from Literally Books, who I've had on here quite a lot. Everybody knows he's my favorite booktuber. Virgil, I was hoping today that we would be celebrating 1,000 subscribers. I know we're
We're,
super close.
I know we are. Thank you again. You keep bringing me up, and it keeps everything. I get these little jumps. I'm like, what happened? What did Chris do?
Oh man, we're almost there. I'm super
We are
excited.
almost there, and I
Thank you.
always appreciate it greatly.
I'm also here today with Brian from Bad Taste Books, who, right off the bat, I love your channel, Brian, but also I think you have the coolest little channel thumbnail of any channel
Oh, yes.
thumbnail I've seen. Uh,
Thank you. Thank you.
it's wonderful. But yeah, I've been watching your channel for a little while. Of course, I always talk about the Thanksgiving video that you did that was the perfect Thanksgiving video out of all the Thanksgiving videos I saw on YouTube for last Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Oh, and you
Thanks
talk
for
Yeah,
about.
I
having me on.
shared that with. Oh,
Go
I shared that with some people too, and they're like, "This book sounds awesome. I love this channel."
It is awesome.
So, channel is amazing. I love your channel. I really do.
I actually sent those two books to Jake from Pulp Mortem because
Oh,
he kept
nice.
commenting on all my videos about Frank and Turkey, and I was like, you know what? You just have those.
Take these books.
Yeah, Brian goes out and finds the books that I swear nobody's ever heard of at all. And that McDowell connection you made, that he wrote the script for the
For that
screenplay.
one episode, the Frank and Turkey TV show episode. Yeah. Who knows why? But only that episode.
Oh my goodness! But yeah, Brian, you always find the books that I have never heard of, and that's what I love about your channel. You talk about stuff that is so out of the normal field of BookTube that just makes it so much fun to watch and learn about new stuff. Sorry, that's my bad. So
Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
yeah, and thank you for coming on the
I'm shocked
channel.
you even
And
watched my videos, so
Absolutely.
honored to be
yeah,
here.
sorry for all the. We had about an hour of technical difficulties, of course. So thanks for putting up with that, guys.
Anytime.
We weren't very
Every
helpful.
You guys were looking stuff up on the phone. It was good.
we tried. We were trying to help or hoping to help. I don't know if I was helping, but I was.
Oh, okay, so today we are here to talk about a book that probably only the three of us have ever read, and that is Thomas Burnett Swann's "The Gods Abide."
God's abide. Am
And
I?
I
Yeah.
hold my copy, but it went back to the used bookstore.
smart. I can't get rid of them. Of course, it's a DAW, and I'm collecting
I don't know
DAWs.
why.
And then apparently George Barr does all these illustrations for these Swann covers, and I really I love the look of the books, and that's I think why you and I read it, Virgil, right? Is because we just had these stacks of Swann
Yeah.
that we
It's
kept.
like these books. It's
I was
got to be
gonna ask
something. There's so many of these around. It's got to be good.
I was gonna
Yeah,
ask you guys what made you read this one because I don't think I got that story.
Virgil.
So I probably am the bad influence here because I read I read a Thomas Burnett Swan short story years and years ago in the Oxford Book of Fantasy Stories and really liked it. I don't remember what that story was. It was not this, obviously. Um, and I was like, man, I really want to read one of his novels. And Chris was like, we should read something. I'm like, hey, I see you had just had you had just gotten a couple books. I'm like,
Yeah.
we should read one of his books. And we're like, okay. And then we started reading it, and then I immediately was like, boy, I hope this is a good book, Chris.
Have you received my package yet, Virgil?
Yeah.
Did you see the
But the mail
package?
hasn't come yet today.
Oh, it hasn't come yet. Okay,
No.
I sent you a gift in return for this. I've returned the favor in the package I sent you.
Fantastic.
Why did you read this, Brian?
Yeah, so um, try not to get too deep into this answer, but I've talked about on my channel. I read mostly horror for like years and years and years, and with maybe 90% horror, 10% sci-fi fantasy.
Yeah.
And over the past like 4 or 5 years, I've really kind of like not flipped it entirely, but I've really tried to get more into sci-fi and fantasy. And I only had a few DAWs, and I'd never read a DAW Yellow Spine before.
Uh-huh.
This is embarrassing to say. I've probably read books that were published as
Right.
DAWs at some point, but never physically read one. So I went in my closet and I was like, I want to read one.
Yeah.
And this was the first one. This is what I picked up to
I'm
read.
laughing. This is what I
know.
read.
Well, it's weird because my first thought is, oh, too bad you didn't pick a good DAW. But my second thought is, I think that's kind of half the DAW experience when you get right down to it. Is they're so beautiful and they have such wonderful covers, and the content don't always match the covers of these books, unfortunately. Okay, let's do a quick. This is going to be a weird one. Jake from Pulp Mortem commented on one of my videos. I think it was my big 2024 end of year video where I introduced my least favorite book as my least favorite book, and he said it's so strange because he said when I hate a book, I'm like, this book sucks, don't ever touch it, and he said the way I hate a book is by being very polite about it. So it's hard for me to be too mean about a book. But this one was not great. The concept, I think, is good, which is, I think, why Virgil and I were interested in it when we started, in that we are in... We're in Rome in the reign of Constantine, I believe. No, that's not right. That's not right.
I think so. I think so.
Is it? Okay. We're in Rome.
I think so.
The Christians.
No one will ever sharpshoot us on this. No one will ever correct
It's
us.
true, unless Thomas Bernard Swann.
We can say anything.
I think he passed away, didn't he?
Yes, he's not. I do not believe. We don't have to worry about offending him.
Right. Yeah. So it's in Rome and Constantine, I think. Or during the reign of Emperor Constantine, when Christianity is rising to power and all of the old myths are being pushed aside. And the story is about a young corn sprite. I've forgotten his name.
Yes, I have also, which should be a hint. Which should be a hint.
Yeah, I remember Dylan's name, but I do not remember...
Dylan and Nod.
Nod. So yes, a young corn sprite named Nod is adopted by a Christian family, and then we get this weaving narration where we're also following a... Oh, what is Dylan? Do you remember that?
Oh, Rowan.
Yes.
Rowan?
Thank you, Brian.
Bill.
You got a good
Right on.
Whatever that is.
Which is, I think, a mythological creature that turns into kind of a seal when they wear a seal skin. I don't know if that's correct.
Something like that.
That's a selkie.
Yes. That's a silky. Yeah, he's some sort of fish man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Some variety.
And then it's just these interwoven narratives as these two mythological creatures that are leftovers from this kind of ancient mythological world are slowly pursued and are tried, as Christianity slowly pursues them in the guise of Nod's father. And it's funny because there's an afterwards in this where he's like, "Sorry, Christians." And I'm not a religious person, but yeah, that he definitely, and this will be the first, but he definitely made the bad guys very two-dimensional in this story.
Yes.
But
they're like mustache twirling Christians.
Yeah.
But before, so that's the basic plot. This is very hard to spoil, but before we get any further, just because Brian, like Virgil and I read this in January, Brian read this like in January of last year, 2024. So I wanted to ask you, Brian, what do you remember about it?
So, yeah. So, as I've said to you guys, my memory of this might be a bit blurry. Basically, Chris watched my 2024 wrap up and saw that I put this really low.
Yeah.
And was like, "Hey, you should jump in and talk about it." And I was like, "We'll see how much I remember." But you gave more details than I think I picked up on when I read it, because I think my problem here is the history that this is taking place in. I'm already not super knowledgeable about. But yeah, I remember just this fish man and this sprite going on adventures, and there's lots of weird sex, and talk of sex for no reason whatsoever. I think at one point they're on the river Styx,
Yeah.
and this writer hates Christians. That's what I got out of it.
Yeah. Like sex, hates Christians.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. So the way I want to go into this, and I've already kind of showed my hand with Brian and Virgil on this in the Discord, but I wanted to bring up the movie Troll 2, which I know, Brian, you're familiar with, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, it's like considered the worst film ever made, and it's kind of beloved for that, and there's conventions for it. I think you're familiar with it too, Virgil, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Actually, we just rewatched it a couple weeks ago.
Oh, nice. So you know it probably better than I do. I bet that was fun.
It was.
I just like the where he's yelling about notching up his belt loops, but
Hunger pangs.
all filmed in Utah, by the way. So there's a documentary about that movie. And I don't know who says this, but there's a person in the documentary that sums this up so beautifully, and that is that this film feels like it was made by aliens who studied humans for like 3 years and then tried to produce a culturally appropriate human film and couldn't quite get it right. And I have to say that I want to use that as a way into this book because that is what this felt like the entire time I was reading it. It felt like an alien watched a bunch of old mythological rituals or read about them, got general ideas about them, and tried to make a book that would appropriately show those. And I think what made me the maddest about it is at first I was into it. I mean, it's a great concept. And then it just devolved into, as Brian already said, two teenage mythological creature boys talking about an orgy, and I swear it's so much of this book.
So much.
Yep. And I have no problem with that, but it just felt like weird and forced, and there was way too much of it.
Yeah.
I mean, no reason. I guess the only reason was to be like, hey, look, like, sex is cool, you Christians. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not sure.
And all the talk, I was like, okay, this book's going to get raunchy, which it never does. It never.
No, this book is PG. This book,
is.
this is an after-school special.
It is. Yeah. It's so wild because I'm like, okay, he's going to, like, I don't know if we're going to be able to talk about this on the channel because this guy is building up. And it just, like, they were talking about which girls each guy was going to get. And Nod felt like he was the king, so he was going to get the best girl for the orgy. And they got there, and Dylan got the girl that he wanted, and he had to accept the girl that wasn't as exciting.
Right. She said something about like I think about you like a brother or something, and it's like he's like, what?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this book is like spends so much time talking about how like Christians are so repressed, but it itself represses itself. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, yeah. It's hold on, I gotta let my cat out, or she's gonna.
It just comically like it just takes such a comical sting. I'm sorry. It's just just to think about it just cracks me up. It just like God damn it, this book.
It's so weird. I remember reading it just being like, what am I reading right now? Like, what is this?
The best part about this book, and the part that made this so entertaining, is that number one, like Troll 2, it is almost good. It's so bad. I don't know if you guys could agree with me on that, but and maybe it's because I was buddy reading with you, Virgil, that I was just imagining that you had to go through all of this as well.
Yes.
And I feel bad for you, Brian, because you just had to read it in a vacuum.
Yeah,
Right,
I was
nobody
just over
else.
here like, what am I doing with my life? Like, what is this?
Did you go back to horror after that for a while?
I might have. I don't know. I don't remember what I read
I'm
next,
done with
but
Daw.
Oh,
Daw books are weird.
I'm done with
I, and after even after the orgy kind of successfully goes off but doesn't, and everything's vague and hinted at, the rest of the novel is this weird cycling between adventure and Nod and Dylan just trying to do it with these women anytime they can.
Yes.
So and it's like, and even I think we talked about this a little bit, Virgil, after we talked about the last book, when we talked about Sword of the Lictor. Every time they are confronted with the bad guys, the mustache twirling bad guys, they easily get through it with no trouble at all.
Yes. Yeah. Like you said, it's like there's like no, it was never a challenge. It's no, yeah, right. It's just like like the risks are usually, well, maybe the risks are there, but it's like it's never really like a struggle. I don't know.
that's another thing I was going to bring up, and it's been a long time since I've read this, but I do remember reading it thinking, I don't know if it was the prose or the way the story was told, like you guys are hinting at that maybe there's no conflict, but I remember just reading it thinking, like, the something felt weird, like the pacing or the storytelling or something was almost surreal in how like odd
Yeah, well,
it felt to me.
it's just Deus Ex Machina over and over and over again, which I
Yeah.
guess, in defense of Swann, he could say, well, this is about Greek myths, so that is literally an okay thing to do. And sure, once.
But you shouldn't.
But like they get
What?
Cerberus and Cerebus. How do you say that three-headed dog's name?
Cerebus? I say Cerebus, but
I
that doesn't
also
mean
say
it's right.
Cerebus, but
I say
somebody corrected me
Cerberus.
once. Would you hear?
Cerberus, I've heard. I might say either. Who knows what I say? Now I can't tell.
Cerebus. Anyway,
Cerberus.
that dog shows up with the bad guys, and they're like, "Be friends with us now." And they take like, and he's a plant dog, and they take like a clipping
Yeah,
and grow a new one.
Yeah.
yeah. I thought, and it was weird about that. It was like, well, of course he's like this, and it was like, I'm not really sure that there's anything hints in the myth of this. I'm like, okay, you're just being creative, I guess, but you make it seem like I should know this, or like, oh, this is like an epiphany you should have.
Right, and he's hanging out with some
I'm like,
ant. Like literally.
Dylan has got a giant ant. There's so yeah. So we need to talk a little bit. We need to do the setup, I think, a little bit because it's like you got Nod as the corn sprite. You get him. He's a baby. He like appears in a cornfield, and these Christians are like, you know what? Maybe it's a corn sprite. Let's adopt him. They're like, the Christian dad's like, I don't know. He's probably lazy, and the Christian mom's like, but I want this baby. So now they have a baby. They're like, okay, corn baby, it's ours. It seems normal, sure. And then you have Dylan, who like doesn't have any memory of his like teenage years. He just remembers himself as a teenager. Some Romans crash their ship on the shore. He helps them fix their ship, and they teach him Latin. I think they teach him Latin.
A little bit.
And then they leave. And some other guys show up later, and then they basically like enslave him. He like ends up in a rowing in a gallery, and he escapes. And then so that's like the initial setup. And yeah, and Dylan has a giant ant, right? Like a giant ant that is like is sentient essentially. It's like his like companion. It's like his pet, you know.
Yes,
which
he
is
calls
weird.
it his friend. He's very serious.
His friend,
about it.
yeah.
It's his friend.
Right. But although this giant ant, which you think would be like, oh yeah, this guy's gonna come into play, does nothing. Like like except for like a very small scene near the end, it's like
Until you guys brought him up, I forgot 100% about the ant.
Yeah, I think
And then you brought it up, and I'm like,
always
oh, wow,
there.
that was a thing, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And all the time, all this weird orgy stuff and everything is happening. There's a giant ant right there on the sideline, watching everything with its eye.
I don't know if you guys
He's like,
can
these humans
see
are-
these at all. Probably not.
The illustrations are great.
I love
I mean,
the
I think they're
illustration.
awesome.
Yeah.
picture of Cerebus, and the ant.
So it's so there's that stuff, and then Dylan and Nod meet through some stuff we're not going to bother to talk about too much. And then it's like they're like, "Hey, you had sex yet? No, neither have I. Let's talk about it a lot. In fact, we've got a lot of time left. There's going to be an orgy today. Oh, an orgy? Yeah, this whole thing." And then they talk for. I mean, it had to be like 2 chapters. They're just like, "Oh yeah,
I
an
think the
orgy."
whole middle of
But the
novel.
thing is, it's so like, it's so benign. It's like, I don't know. It's like it's like it's trying to be like risque, but it's not like offensive at all. Like you could record this as a movie and show it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a school day, and no children would be offended. Like,
And maybe that's where the disconnect is that I was talking about with that. It's like Aliens watched for a while and then was trying to make
Yeah.
something humans would understand. Is this? I don't know how old he was when he wrote this, but I think he was harkening back to times and how teenagers thought about and talked about sex, and he didn't get it right.
it just, I mean, it's like, okay. I mean, I was like, boy, this is a lot of talk with 2 teenage boys about sex. Oh, well, I guess, well, at least this is it. This chapter will be it. And it's like, oh no, this is in fact, the entirety of the novel from here on out. We're just things happen, but we're going to keep going back to this.
Yeah.
I just didn't get what the point was. I mean, like you said, I guess he's, the whole thing is about the pagans are being pushed out by the Christians and their ways changing with that. But I don't know. It was like, I don't get it.
Yeah, and I think he also did a disservice to the concept of paganism,
Yeah.
in the sense that he made that flat too, that it was all just running through the fields having sex.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's nothing wrong with it. It's like, they're all definitely painted in this like very glowing light, and Christians are like,
to this book.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
in any concept.
And before I forget to mention it, there's 2 orgies that happen in this book, explicitly orgies, of which are also could be shown on television and no one be offended, I feel. It's just like that. It's like that benign, I guess. And there's 2 women. They're professional orgy like givers or whatever. And I think that these 2 boys are the only 2 that attend. So I'm not really sure if it really counts as this massive it's like we throw orgies, and it was like they just go and like travel about the countryside. Like,
like
I don't think that's quite what he was going for, but that is absolutely what the energy is.
Right.
It's like,
well, and he presents it as they're doing rituals. They go around and do important spring harvest rituals, but it's just apparently running through the fields having sex. Is all.
And what's so weird is that these 2 teenage boys are the only 2 people who think this is cool. Like everybody else, like, oh, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Like not even like Jesus is against it. It's like this is just bad. It's like what is going on with all these? It's like, especially Nod's father,
Right.
who is like this warlike guy and everything. You would think he would be like, women and everything like that. Like, no, his wife, I think Nod's adopted mother or whatever, even says like, oh yeah, we don't have a child because basically he won't ever sleep with me. And it's like, this just seems so weird. This is
Weird.
There was like, it was just like so bizarre. I was just like, I don't know what to think about all the motivation of these characters. Sorry. Just
no, it makes perfect sense.
Crazy.
It was this constant onslaught of nonsense that was so hard to take. And
it also
and
wasn't that interesting, frankly. The actual
wasn't.
plot, like it was like I was like, whatever, okay.
Which is
I don't know.
It's such a good idea on paper.
It is.
That could have been done with complexity and really thought out. Now I read that Swann was a poet, as well as a fantasy writer, and I really liked his prose at first, but it just kind of fell apart at the
Yeah.
end. Well, at the middle, really. I want to talk about the end, which means there's going to be spoilers from here on out. I really don't recommend this book. So if you want to keep
No, I
watching and have
can't.
it spoiled for you, then that's fine. Although in a weird way, I would recommend it. Like I'd love for Jake from Pulp Mortem to hear his take on this one.
So, what do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like this like they're like the book that I had the hardest time with in 2024 was Riders of the Purple Wage by Philip Jose Farmer. I did not enjoy that, but in a weird way, I kind of did enjoy this. In a weird Troll 2 sort of way. It was so ridiculous. I was just laughing so hard while I read it because of how just over the top this thing is. So it might be worth it just for comedy. It's very hard to spoil anything in this, which is why I want to talk about the end, because everything he tried to do fell apart because he did not. I don't know if he didn't know the conventions of writing a novel or what, but let me just rant on this for a second.
I don't even remember the ending, so I'm ready to be re-spoiled.
I had to reread it. I had to
Re-spoiled.
reread it because I was like, wait, what happened? Okay. So it turns out that his mother, his adopted mother, Nod's adopted mother, is Demeter, the goddess of spring. And the woman that he wanted to be in the orgy with, that eventually ended up with Dylan, is Persephone. And the whole point of the journey was that they are the apparently last mythic creatures that exist. And that's all really cool, except how does that even work as a twist if we don't know what's going on the entire novel? Right? So you could call the Demeter thing a twist. That's a twist. But they introduce us to Roans, to corn sprites. Persephone just wanders in to do this ritual. There's a siren that saves Dylan at one point. Cerberus shows up randomly and they take a clipping and grow him. Like, nowhere in this book was I made aware that these people are very important because they are the last mythic creatures in existence. Because every chapter in this novel, mythic creatures are like falling. There's a rat demon living in this cellar. Like, there are mythical creatures everywhere. The concept that this was secretly a journey to get these very precious and important mythical creatures to the Greek land of Olympus or wherever they end up is ridiculous, because the stakes can't be the twist. You need to give us the stakes at the beginning of the story so that we can involve ourselves in the story so that the twist will work. You can't make the stakes the twist, because then we're just reading nonsense and go, oh, I guess that was important.
Yeah. I vaguely remember reading that and just kind of being like, oh, okay, yeah, I don't care anymore. And then like,
yeah. Totally.
I don't. Even the structure of the book feels like it was somebody alien to writing that came and tried to do this. It's so wild. And I mean, I'll say that the Demeter twist, that's fine. That's fine. That's a twist. But yeah, the other one just didn't work for me, because I was like, you had mythological creatures falling out of the sky in every chapter. There's no way I ever thought, boy, I bet there aren't very many left. I never went there. That's my
Swann fans are just smashing the unsubscribe button.
Are there Swann fans?
How dare you?
Oh my gosh, there are Swann fans.
I think there are.
Really?
Oh, Chris, we might have lost your video.
Oh yeah, you froze
we
a little
totally
bit.
did. That always happens. Sorry, guys. That's because of technical difficulties. I'll just put a picture of the orgy up there. Or the ant.
An ant.
if there are Swann fans, yeah, please, in the comments. I'm sorry I'm bashing on your guy, but yeah, just tell us what we missed, because I didn't get it. I didn't get it.
Yeah, yeah. I had one more Daw Swan book. I had Cry Silver Bells,
Uh
and as soon as I finished the first one, I looked at the cover of it and I was like, "Is that a Minotaur?
huh.
Is he doing it again? Is Myth his thing?" And I just took it to
It
the
is
used
his thing.
bookstore.
And it's too bad, because Myth's my thing. I love Myth, but yeah, I didn't feel like Swann hit it in this one, and
No.
as crazy as this is, I want to give him another try sometime. I
I
really
I
do.
kind of do. I kind of do too. I mean, I that short story I read, I remember liking. I think, like you said, the prose, like the moment to moment prose, wasn't bad. Like he could write a good sentence, and it was like, oh, that's not bad. But what he chose to write about was sometimes like, okay, that's strange. And then it was just like, where's the plot?
Yeah.
Like what? I do remember, like it said like part two. I'm like, part two? Like, where's part one? I really do remember, like, wait a minute, what just happened in part? Nothing happened. And I don't want to miss pointing out that the second orgy that happens is with the with Dylan and Nod and the two professional orgy givers, and they have to have an orgy with a bunch of Tritons and Sirens who are
Oh,
going to attack them. And their defense is to have an orgy.
that's one of the
And
Deus
there's a
Ex
scene,
Machinas.
right? And then there's a discussion between the two women that reminded me of Gimli and Legolas, where they compare like who can kill more orcs, because they're comparing who had sex with more Tritons.
I remember that part,
I
unfortunately.
was like, what?
Oh my god.
It's so funny. This is what this book is funny in that way. It's just like, this is so goofy. But you definitely need to have somebody to talk. Like if I had read this on my own, I would have been like, what happened in my life?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
what I
was
thought.
happy because I could constantly think that you were having to do it too, Virgil.
I was definitely going like, God damn it, what did I have Chris read?
I'm glad you guys
Seriously.
hit me up because it makes me feel like me reading that wasn't a waste.
There
Was
you
it a
go.
way?
Wasn't a-
Yeah, Chris was like, Brian put it on his like near the bottom of his list, and you're like, it was like the worst book was whatever it was, and then this was number two, and I just laughed. I'm like, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, if any
Yep.
of you have read this and we're off base, tell us in the comments. If any of you want to read it, go
I don't
ahead
know how you.
and come back and tell us about it.
Yeah, if somebody knows what to read, like okay, a
Yeah,
good one-off Swan novel or or a short story or two to look at. I mean, I have the one.
I have
I don't
like
have the book around
12
me.
novels by Swann. I do. He's always
You are
there.
literally like
When you
epic
guys hit
level
me up for
collector at
this,
this point.
that's why. Yeah. When you guys hit
Chris
me
is
up
the
for this, I
biggest
was like,
Swan
all right.
collection in the United States.
Yeah,
Oh, he might have it. He might have it.
yeah.
When you guys hit me up for this, I was like, oh man, I need to refresh my memory. I should go buy this again, shouldn't I?
No,
And I was like, I told myself, I'm not gonna order it online. I'll go to some used bookstores if it's there.
Yeah.
I'll get it, but I'm not gonna seek it out. And I'm glad I didn't find it because then I would have been the only person in the world to purchase this book twice.
Yeah. Oh my god. Okay, I
oh
think
man.
that's enough about that. Just to close up everything, Brian. What are you reading? What are you doing next on your channel?
Oh, I don't know, man. I just I'm well, like I just told you guys, I just started reading Michael McDowell's Blackwater series.
We're all
I
reading
don't
that.
have any like
Yeah,
specific videos planned. I'm always reading things, and I'll talk about something when I feel like talking about it. So if you
right on,
guys
right on.
want to check it out, if you're interested, yeah.
Absolutely,
What you got coming up,
totally
Virgil?
interested. Uh, for reviews, I've got. I want to do one on Clark Ashton Smith, the City of Singing Flame,
Mm.
uh, and Hubie Cave's Mergenstrom. But what I'm reading Blackwater also, and somebody, Aaron, a friend of mine, recommended this book by Brian Evanson called Last Right. No, not Last Right. Last Days.
Huh.
Last Days, and it's a more recent horror novel from like 2011.
Huh.
It's about this. I don't really know exactly what it's about, per se, but I would want to say it's about a cult that is into amputation and how this guy is sort of forced into this cult.
Ooh,
And it's
body horror.
humorous and
That sounds
yeah,
interesting.
humorous and very crazy right out of the gate. And I really
Huh.
like it.
Huh.
Last right?
I said that wrong. It's Last Days.
Last Days. I'll look that up.
Not to be confused with the Aaron Neville book of the same name, but this is Brian Evanson.
Okay.
I believe.
I've never read any Cave either.
Yeah.
Yes, he's a pulp kind of exploitation-ish writer. That's a really interesting story. It's like crime fiction mixed with horror.
Huh.
So it's actually a pretty famous vampire story. Although the vampire is not the worst. Vampires aren't the worst thing in that story.
I sold my Brian Lumley's because of you, Virgil.
I'm sorry. Well, I kind of like Brian Lumley, but you could probably tell if you didn't like where it was going that you wouldn't like his
I
stuff.
watched it. I was like, that's not for me. Vampires.
Fair enough.
I've always wanted to read the Necroscope, and I never have. So now you guys are scaring me.
Yeah. Well,
I like Necroscope.
Virgil did a good review on it. Sorry, Virgil.
That's okay. I like Necroscope. And I also really like the second book, what's it called? Vampire, I think. The first one is good. It's sometimes it's a little cheesy, I think, a little earnest, but I kind of like it. It kind of does it. So it's kind of like horror, but it's a little goofy, kind of like Cold War stuff. And the second book is like, I don't know, like a supernatural version of the X-Men almost.
Yeah.
Kind of. I think it's worth trying. It's very pulpy. It's very fun. It's a well-loved series. I think
I'm
Brian Lumley
selling
does
my
pretty good.
Lumley, and Brian's like, I gotta check these out.
Yeah.
You should be able to find.
I kept.
You should be able to find Necroscope pretty cheap.
Oh yeah. I kept all my
like
Cthulhu Mythos stuff by him though, because I've heard that's really good.
Yeah, he was a big, not exactly pastiche writer, but Cthulhu Mythos inspired writer.
Yeah. So I kept all that.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. I've enjoyed a number of his things. Not everything have I loved, but I liked the Necroscope series.
Yeah. Well, all right, guys. Thank you very much for spending the afternoon with me, talking and dealing with my technical difficulties.
Anytime. It's always a pleasure to enjoy it. Seeing you go, God, what is going on?
It's like when everyone was cracking up at your last video when you're just mid-sentence, like, the fuck is that?
I don't know what that was. It was like a mob.
Dude, like half the comments were about that. It was cracking me up.
So funny because I was editing and I was like, of course I'm going to edit that out. But I just kept talking. So the edit, I kept trying to edit it and I was like, forget it. I'm just going to leave it in there.
It's just too hard.
It's funny because I try to sometimes make jokes, and I think that's it's very hard as a YouTuber to be like, I'm gonna make a joke, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And write it and script it and try to do it. I do it every once in a while, and I think it can sometimes fall flat, but stuff like that happens is just great. It just comes out of nowhere.
Absolutely, it was good.
All right, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Chris.
Thanks.
Yeah, and if we're all reading Blackwater, maybe we can come together at the end of that. And
that sounds awesome.
We can chat
I'd be down for that for sure.
Because that would be a different video, I think, than
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
The Gods Abide.
Yeah, I would hope so.